If the men hadn't been wearing prison uniforms, I wouldn't have known that I was in the workplace of a maximum security prison. There was absolutely nothing threatening about the workroom. In fact, the only element that set this small garment factory apart from one in the free world was that there was a vibe of contentment and enjoyment, like the men really wanted to be there. Some of the guys gave me a friendly nod or a smile as I passed, and I noticed that not one of them stopped working while they made that small connection. My co-author Tay, a former gang leader and multi-state drug dealer, is one of the employees here. His supervisor told me that Tay is a really hard worker, but that it took him a while to get to that point. Initially, he didn't want a job sewing prison garments. Knowing Tay as I do, it's possible that he didn't want to work at all. At his career peak, Tay made thousands of dollars a day working when he felt like working and doing only what he felt like doing. Tay reports for his garment factory job at 7 a.m. That's about the time he used to go to bed. I'm certain that many of his peers in the workroom have similar backgrounds, so getting these guys to work for approximately 45 cents an hour is challenging enough. Getting them to want to work for 45 cents an hour sewing clothes seems pretty close to miraculous. I'm writing a book and developing support groups with Tay. He wants to do these projects, yet I sometimes get so exasperated by his periods of inertia that I want to throw in the towel. We're talking about a man who once managed 20,000 gang members and a drug empire. The man has certainly demonstrated that he's capable of motivation. When I heard that his supervisor had a management style that motivated Tay and others like him, I had a vested interest in hearing about it. Her method is beautiful in its simplicity.
So my first week on the job, my supervisor decided that she was going to make sure that I was up for it. So she says, I want you to go through here and do a raid. Go through everybody's little cubbies and their little workspace and collect all their personal items, their clothing. She gave me a bin, said, take everything.
How did the men react to that?
Well, they were angry. One of them particularly got angry, and he got in my face, and I said, look, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm sorry. If I can give it back to you, I'll give it back to you. And so I went home thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into? But the next day, the inmates' co-workers came to me and said, oh, Mr. Quintanilla is so sorry. He felt so bad. He realized you were only trying to do your job. So I took it upon myself to have a discussion with him, because I thought the only way this guy's going to see the reality of his ways and change his behavior is to get a different perspective. He came and apologized to me, and I said, well, I appreciate your apology. I understand. But you need to get some help. You need to take some classes on anger management, conflict resolution. And I said, I accept your apology, and we moved on, and I had no further incident with that inmate for several years. Well, probably 4 years later, that same inmate came to me and he said, Julie, I took your advice. I said, what advice are you talking about? I give advice every day.
So long ago by that point.
Yeah, exactly. He said, I signed up for conflict resolution and anger management classes, and he said, the instructor has given us a directive that we need to come up with something that we did that was negative and show what we've done to change that. The most significant thing that I could think of was the conversation that you and I had when you stole my clothes. and he said, if it's okay with you, I would like to use that as my class project and to comment on that. And I said, hey, if it helps you, I'm all for it.
You know what's really neat about this job? I think that all of us by a certain age realize that the things we say, they come back around. We don't realize that they made an impact. Just telling somebody they're smart.
Right.
And next thing you know, they've got a college degree.
Right.
And it's because you said that they were smart. Well, you have a whole lot of people here who have had very few people point out anything positive about them or care about them. That was constructive criticism that you gave that man. And he soaked it up and brought it back to you.
Yeah, he did. And later on, he came back and he said, the best thing you ever did for me was to tell me what you told me, that it totally changed my life. He said, I don't react the same way that I did when I was
to you it was nothing.
here.
To you it was just handling
it
a
was
situation.
just common sense that I would give anybody. It's like I tell these guys out here, yeah, my job is to make you sew and to produce a product, but my real job here is to teach you work ethics and responsibility and what it takes to be successful when you leave here. Teaching people that have maybe never had a positive role model, never had a parent, never had a job, to come to work every day, do a good job, and to teach them what is required.
How do you see them as responding to work?
And a lot of them are like sponges. They soak it up. Once they make up their mind they're interested, they really go for it.
So would you say that the majority
I would say at least 80% or
Wow,
more.
that's a vast majority.
Yeah. When they come in here, I have a little spiel, and my spiel is you're either on my team or you're not. This is like a football team here, and I'm the quarterback. You know, I have several rules. Don't lie to me, don't steal from me, come to work on time, and work.
What's interesting about this is these men, a lot of them are coming from gang environments where being a team was the most important thing to them, having a feeling of belonging to something. So you're bringing them into this feeling of belonging, and you're basically laying down some of the same rules that they had on the street.
Probably, yeah.
So loyalty is incredibly important to most of these guys.
My workers are very loyal to me. I mean,
well, you've made them part of your team, so.
but I'm very diligent in kicking anybody to the curb that doesn't want to play by the rules.
That was also the street ethics.
My biggest heartburn with the whole thing is that people tend to forget after they've been here for a while that these are still somebody's brothers or fathers or sons, and that they still have feelings, and that they're not given the respect that people give people on the outside. I've had a lot of really good inmates, several that have paroled in the last couple of years that have done really well. And as a matter of fact, a couple of them called me back to let me know how they're doing. And one in particular, he's called me back at least 3 times, said that he got a job as a printer. He worked there about a year, and then he was offered a job by either FedEx or UPS. He wanted to know what to do about it, and I said, well, grass always looks greener on the other side, and yeah, you might get better benefits, but you might work for a guy that doesn't like you or respect you or resents you because you have a criminal background, and so you have to weigh all these options.
What I liked the most about this story is that it shows how life-altering and how important it is for anybody to care about them and to think well of them and just have even confidence in them.
Yeah, and I've had a really hard time with this because I think that it's important that they be able to kind of still relate back to us, because I think they really need that constant reassurance that they're doing good and they're on the right path. But on the other side, you get those in staff that see it as you're being overly familiar. And I've had a really hard time with that, and there were some issues behind that. He's just trying to tell me how good he's doing and that what a difference it made in his life, this job.
And I understand the security reasons behind that.
I do too.
However,
but you got to give them a bone.
There's some tragedy in being maybe the one person that man feels anchored to, especially once they're released, and especially after serving a lot of time, they're just blowing around in the wind.
I mean, he called me and he said, I got married, I have a job, and the bottom line was on the story, he called me back later and he said, I decided to take that job. I went back to my employer, and my employer said, you're doing such a good job, you have such a great work ethic, that I'm going to give you $1 more an hour now, and in 6 months I'll give you another $1 if you stay.
He got to be proven he was a valuable employee.
Exactly. And I said, my job is to teach you a work ethic and to show you how to be successful.
Probably, even though once won't admit it, every single one of these guys desperately wants to connect with somebody and have somebody who treats them as special.
Yes, and of course, because of the environment, you have to be careful, and
you have to treat this as a normal workplace.
Exactly.
However, you've got people here who really want to shine.
Yes.
They want to stand out and feel important and of value.
Right.
And my belief is that most men are in prison because of lack of self-value. So they look for where they can. And it sounds like you give it to them, but they're kind of clamoring for it a little bit.
Yeah. And I have my workforce is really loyal.
Yeah.
The 99% of them are really, really loyal.
What do you think most helps them rehabilitate?
I try to keep this as low-key and as normal feeling as possible so that they don't feel like they're in prison. When they walk through the door, I say, good morning, Mr. So-and-so. I give the respect, but I don't demand it, and as a consequence, I get it back tenfold.
Well, they're so used to not being respected that when they get respect, they really want to keep that connection strong.
Yeah, and I keep it light. Even when I have to discipline them, I try to do it kind of jokingly. They'll be talking and I'll say, well, no, if your machine was running as fast as your mouth, you'd be knocking out the work like there was no tomorrow or something.
So you treat this like a normal job.
And I do. And
and then they feel like normal people.
And that's what I try to make them feel like they are normal people, because they they need something like that. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. The first thing I tell them when they come in here is, you all start with a clean slate. I don't care what you did to get here. I'm not here to continue to punish you for that. You start with a clean slate with me. With where you take it from there is up to you.
So to summarize, based on what I've heard from your employees here, what you're doing works. And what works is treating them with respect, making the job environment as much like a normal non-prison environment as possible, disciplining them as you would somebody on the outside, so that it doesn't feel so punitive, because they get punitive everywhere they go here. And acknowledging when they're doing well. So that's wonderful. Thank you.